Hi, welcome to this video, Learn to Play Blues Guitar. And I think it's probably the most important step is to learn how to play the blues, because a lot of other things are based on the blues, like jazz or even pop music, rock and roll. How do we go about learning the blues? Well, first we should know a little bit about the history. The scale that's called the blues scale is actually something that originated in Africa, and the slaves that were transported from Africa over to the Caribbean and also to the southern states of the United States, they would sing their tribal music on the plantations when they were working in the hot sun, just to help them get through that very difficult situation. And the scale they were using has become known as the blues scale. Let's have a look at it. It's got 6 notes, and in the key of E, it's E, G, A, B flat, B, D, and that's the octave for another E. I think it's a great thing to play on one string, first of all, because it means we don't have to worry about fingerings. We need to have the sound of the blues scale in our consciousness and not worry about fingerings, first of all. Actually, singing is a very good thing. Da, 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 da. And my voice isn't as good as it used to be, but if you use your voice consequently, then it will get better. And that doesn't mean you have to always sing what you're playing, but definitely at the beginning when you're learning things, it's a very important step, because it guarantees us that we're not just playing fingerings by looking, oh, here's the 3rd fret. I'm supposed to put my first finger down there and then go up to the 5th fret and so on. So if you can sing the scale, then you'll be able to play it. And you'll be able to play it anywhere, with practice, of course. So we've just learnt the blues scale on one string. And I like to test myself every now and then by closing my eyes or looking away, if I can play it, because I see the neck of the guitar in my mind's eye, in my brain. Of course, you need orientation, and you need to know where the first note here on the 3rd fret is. But once you've got that, here we don't need to change the position, so it's definitely not difficult. You see, I'm giving the notes expression. I'm making a series of videos actually about blues, and one of them will be about phrasing, and a big part of phrasing, of course, is how to add expression to a note. And one way is to use vibrato, which can be slow or fast or in between. And the other thing is sliding and hammering on, pulling off, and bending. Now, all of those things are really important for us to get the message across. That's what we need to do. Think about, what do we want to say? Of course, not when you're learning the scale, but once you've got the scale and you want to improvise with it, you have to start thinking of phrases, as it is with a language. Blues is a language, and you might say, well, how do I learn it? Well, you listen to blues and you'll hear phrases that are often played by different players. They'll play the same phrase, maybe a little bit more vibrato or less vibrato. And so you should be collecting phrases when you're starting to learn blues, as when you're learning a language. You also learn basic phrases like, how are you? And my name is Peter, whatever. So if you don't know those phrases, you won't be able to communicate with anybody, and they won't have any message from you. That would be a sad situation to be in. But we're going to learn also in one of the videos that's coming up, which is called transcribing, we're going to copy solos and phrases from famous players and make them our own. That means memorizing the phrases and finding the fingerings. That's an exciting thing. And so that'll be one of the videos coming up. There'll be a whole series actually, and in this video I just wanted to introduce you to what I perceive is important for learning to play blues guitar. And the other thing we'll be doing is learning to use more than one voice. You might have heard in my improvisation before, I might be doing something like this. So that's not the blues scale, and there are other scales which we can use to play over what's called a dominant 7 chord, which is our first chord in this progression. It's E7, and someone came along one day in the early 1900s, it may have been J.C. Handy, who was a musician he went to do some research down to the southern states, and he recorded some of the singing that he heard on the plantations. And then he came up with chord progression, which we call 12-bar blues. And that wasn't anything that the African music had. The African music was linear because it was sung. They didn't have instruments. They just sang that sound of the blues scale, and there were songs, of course, using it. But then W.C. Handy and others, I'm sure, came along and said, let's put some structure to this, 12 bars or 8 bars sometimes, and let's put some harmony in there, some chords. So you should listen to early versions of blues, and Robert Johnson is a very famous example. He would sing and had a guitar, acoustic guitar, and he tuned so that he was always playing major triads. And he would use a slide also. So that's one thing I would really recommend. Just have a listen to how things were pretty much at the start. And of course things evolved. People started to improvise over the 12-bar form. There's a lot of guitarists who became famous playing the blues, and we'll be listening to real solos and real phrases from people like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, of course, B.B. King, and many others. Just first of all to get an idea of what the language is, looking for those similarities between two different players, looking for those phrases that everybody plays. Now I'd like to talk about exploring the neck. I'll just demonstrate that to you, how it is when you're playing on one string only. So of course it's quite limiting, but imagine you were on the stage and all 5 strings broke and you only had one left and you had to play your solo. I'm sort of joking, but I've been in situations where a string is broken and then you get that look from the guys in the band like, oh no, you won't be able to do anything now. And of course I just played the B string, or I played obviously what was left and just continued on as if nothing had happened. And so that's one thing that we should be ready for if a string breaks. So let's look at the B string, and we're still in the key of E. We've still got that same scale. So we'll start with the open string, which is a B, so we know it's in that scale. Then we'll have a D, and an E, and then a G, A, B flat, and the octave. As the next step, we'll do two strings. So the two that we've covered so far, E and B. So you see, it becomes second nature to us to play that scale because we've already memorized the sound and we know where it is. They're the same intervals. If we play on the E string 3 notes, then they're the same 3 notes, but they're just higher up. So that's what guitar is about. We've always got to deal with these things. We'll have more than one fingering for the same note or phrase. So our next objective is the G string. G is a note from the scale, that's good. Actually, all the open strings are in the E blues scale. That's pretty cool. But we're not going to play all the strings yet. We're just going string by string. Okay, G, A, B flat, B, D, E, G. Now you can combine 3 strings, and you saw me moving up in positions. That's what guitar is about also. Now we've got a range of 1 octave. You can use open strings if you want. Sometimes they're very practical because you can do things like that. And now we'll move up to the 3rd position. You might want to slide down to the A so that you have an octave. Now we're up to the 5th position. Again, we can slide down to the 4th position to get that B, and we've got an octave. A lot of things you can do with bending. I'll tell you that in the upcoming video. Then we've got the 7th position. That's good too. We can slide that B flat up to the B. Bending is a cool thing. Depending on where you are on the neck, you can bend a half step like, or a whole tone, or even a minor third can be good sometimes. And that just, again, depends on where you're on the string, how much tension the strings have in that particular position you're playing. So with 3 strings, we've really got a lot of possibilities. And of course, changing positions. Now that we've learnt the scale on 1 string, let's improvise with it. Meaning, we'll use this as our alphabet and make phrases and try to get the message across. A very important part of that is the phrasing. I've already told you about that. And there's also the rhythmical aspect. When we play something, we've got to play in the groove. So we have a rhythm section here who's playing what's called a shuffle, which means that each beat has 3 parts, and that's called a triplet. It's like this. You can hear it in the drums and you can hear it in the bass, that they're playing the triplet feel. Da, 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 da. Right, so that's the first and the third part of the triplet. Da, 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 da. When we're practicing, we should have something that is steady, like a metronome or a backing track, and so that you can really hear those triplets there, so that you can lock onto them when you're improvising. And you could improvise something very simple. I'll just demonstrate. So you can hear in my lines the melodic component and also the rhythmical. I just played 8 bars. I didn't play the whole 12, but I was in that groove that we've been hearing on the backing track. So that's important. It takes a while to learn that. When you're starting out, you play with the backing track, but you can't play without it. You see what I'm saying? Because you rely on them to keep the time and keep the groove. But it's important to be able to do it without the backing track. Get your metronome app or buy a metronome that does this and turn it onto a slow tempo. This is 80 beats per minute, which I think is a good tempo for, well, it's a slow blues, so you don't need to get stressed out having to play triplets at a faster tempo. And then it's a matter of, okay, what's the right hand doing? I haven't talked about that. Well, there's a lot of options. First of all, I've been using a pick today, plectrum, and that means I'm using so-called alternate picking. The motion for the right hand, if you're playing a triplet, is down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. That's, of course, something you might want to change that later when you get more familiar with triplets and things. There are other ways you can use hammer-ons so that you don't have to pick everything. But if you're picking everything, that's something that works well. So down, up, down, down, up, down, down. If you're just playing the first and the third triplet, like in a swing groove, then you've got down, up, down, up. So that's quite logical. And yeah, you could use also pull-offs. Now I'm only using downstrokes because the left hand, especially the fourth finger, is strong enough to keep the groove going. There's a lot of things. This is something I don't want to get into depth now because I've got a video coming up about all of these things. This is a Gibson 345, which is like a 335. It just has different inlays, and it used to have gold plating. But it's basically the same as a 335, which has 22 frets. And that means you can, if you're playing the blues scale in the key of E, you can make the octave, the double octave. I also want to make a video about setting up your guitar, what sort of guitar is good for blues. Of course, anything can work, even if it's only got one string. Of course, we like to have 6 strings in general, and having the capability to play your complete string range is a good thing. You'll often see players, when they're building up a solo, they'll start down in a lower range, down here, and then to build their solo, they will change the position, go up to a higher position, and maybe basically playing the same stuff, But of course, the higher you play, the more exciting it gets. Or at least that's what it is in theory. And it doesn't mean about technical things. You don't have to play speedy stuff. That might evolve with time. Depends on what your concept is. Again, don't forget about the message. So I'll just demonstrate that also, playing in the low register and then going up to a high register. The longer you play, the more things become second nature to you, meaning you might even be walking along the street and you could be imagining that you're soloing. You can hear the phrases you would play and also where they are because you've learnt your instrument. And so it becomes a part of us, and that's really good because the brain never sleeps. It might look like it is when you're sleeping, but the brain is always doing something. And if you give it a task, it will do it. And one of those tasks can be, let's learn to improvise on a blues. And if you give it some input and then sleep over it, for example, you'll wake up the next day and you'll have ideas that you didn't have the day before. That's just the way it is, because your brain has been working. And that's pretty good. It'll do that. It doesn't cost anything. It's just you need to give it something to do. So we haven't talked really about the chords yet. Well, I did mention the E7, and there's different ways to play E7. It's a dominant 7 chord. It's got actually 4 notes, and there are things called inversions, which everybody should know. And I'll get into depth about these inversions in the video about chords and comping. You can also reduce a chord to its basic functional notes, and that's the 3rd and the 7. And that's enough information if you're playing with a bass player and a drummer to define the dominant 7 chord. The 12-bar blues form has 3 different dominant 7 chords: E7, A7, and B7. They're spread over the 12 bars, and in the description here, I've got a link for you to download a lead sheet with 12-bar blues and also a backing track, this one that I'm playing with. And I'll always include some bonus material. I'll do some more improvising again because it's fun, and I'll see you in the next video.